So we kick off turn 3, and significant income has come in, but there's also fair expenses. Now, the Greeks came right up against their civ point limit of 8. They have 8 heavy infantry, but nobody actually exceeded it. For bids, I got to pay 4 and 3 for the 2 naval expenditures for the people who have them. And that gives us fairly decent amounts of money left for some of these powers. The Greeks have 14, Carthage has 12, Rome we can forget about, 12 over there for the East. The East got 2 extra bucks. They also, though, got a succession war against Egypt. And that may be enough to convince the Greeks to continue pushing against the Seleucids. The problem here, of course, is Carthage is the bully, but they're not in the lead. The Greeks are in the lead. The Seleucids would love to turn their way against fighting the Greeks. They don't want this war anymore. They probably didn't want it to begin with, even though they started it. But they really need to, move on. But at this point, it's going to be pretty tough to convince the Greeks that, yeah, I'll be your ally when the Greeks are in the lead and in the clear lead in this game. So, yes, maybe not that clear. Carthage is certainly doing quite well as well, but it's not like what it seemed to be, which was so obvious that Carthage is going to get the win over Rome and that's going to be a big deal. Greece is looking, the only thing that Greece can look at, though, is, okay, once Rome's gone, what happens with Carthage? They're going to turn against the other person who's in a big shape, in good shape. So if an alliance could come up, they could discuss this, but without it, it's going to be tough. Anyway, at this point, I get to build new troops. I'm going to also try to remember, especially for the people who have a little extra cash on hand, to buy some of those objectives. Carthage especially wants it because they're kind of in this safe zone. The Greeks have a more troublesome situation where they have to build up their military might quite heavily to handle the problem that they see that they're facing right now. And they cannot speak to the Seleucids. So unfortunately, there aren't really good rules for what happens if Egypt goes to war. There are also excess Egyptian pieces that don't make sense, like excess elephants and the like. Maybe there's scenarios using the Egyptians that actually allow them to be a player. To tell you the truth, that's what I'd really like to see, is a 5-player set of rules for this. It would require some additional counters as well. That's one thing to hope for in the reprint. That would make a lot more sense. It may not be balanced, but, anyway, I'm trying to figure out what the hell the Ptolemaic action is because of the booty call table. So normally, it's from a card, the successor's roll-on card. And this all makes sense with that. They make one action, as far as I can see, which isn't too impressive, to attack. But here it's not clear, A, who controls them, B, when the action is undertaken. What I think is going to happen is they're just going to march up and grab this town again and take it from the East. I'm going to do it after builds. It gives the East a chance to build stuff. Well, they did build stuff. They built it all here. They're worried about the Greeks. If they lose something to the Ptolemaics, they know the Ptolemaics go back right after one action. So it's no big deal. The Ptolemaics are not going to take much. Now, someone could conceivably send them up here. That's why it doesn't... I'm not sure who should control them. That's what's not clear here. So if the Greeks controlled them, they would probably hunt the Seleucids as much as they can. Whereas, if it's anyone else, they're happier seeing the Seleucids in existence. I don't know. Well, my quick decision was a roll-off. Everybody rolled up. Carthage ended up getting control, and they went and took Judea. That's painful. They've got to take something, and then they returned back. Actually, I should have rolled a movement roll. They have a pretty high leader there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Actually, they are going to continue on into Syria, and they don't bring everything with them, so I gotta figure out what they take. They may end up knocking that out too. Already, though, they've knocked the eastern stability down, which could be important if the East can't retake that or whatever, because they've taken a territory away. Well, they've taken a province and a territory away, actually. The territory doesn't count for anything, although it does get reduced here, and I have to take care of all the paperwork on the charts. Alright, well, the Ptolemaics managed to capture Antioch as well, which causes an additional loss beyond the province loss. And you can see the East is now in turmoil, which cannot be good. They have additional problems on top of that. They lost their leader, I think. I've got to look that up to make sure that's the case. But he was defending a siege, and he lost his entire force, so I think. But I haven't looked that up. But this is beginning to shape up into a two-player game between Carthage and Greece. It really is. And I don't think that's going to happen with most games of it, but the denial of alliance, the natural speaking to one another that creates a certain balance of power, may be sort of an issue here. Now, obviously, there's an option not to play with that. But I could see where that's kind of a big negative if, it's going to boil down to a two-player game pretty much, within the next turn or two. And that's what it looks like it's going to happen. Now, granted, the East is weaker because the Ptolemaics, if they had had Egypt in here, they might have been able to hold their own against the Greeks. In fact, they were doing pretty well, but at least it looked like it. But obviously, things started turning comparatively. All right, I'll look up to make sure that I lost that leader, but at this point, I think we can pretty much hang it up for everyone except Carthage and Greece. It's just a matter of finalizing that. And see, that's the thing. You're not going to see a player going in and conquering, say, Hispania under these conditions, because those backlands, expending the force to take out these tribes is major. It was one thing when I was down here and I was able to ignore Italy, but once I realized, hey, I could take Italy out, great. Well, now I've started to lose a couple of these due to the tribal resurgences, and bad things are looking like it's going to come down to a showdown between me and Greece, and I'm not going to be any more powerful than Greece, probably. In fact, what Greece is gaining from here might be to their advantage. We'll see. And yes, I'm right about the leader loss. When you lose an army in its entirety, you lose the leader. But what I've been forgetting about is making die rolls for leader loss in common battles. They're not terribly likely, but there's a fair chance one would have happened already. Oh well. I did neglect to tell you what got bought and where. I'm on a cord now. Carthage built a couple of infantry down here, a couple of heavies to reinforce with. Once they have a province, they can start doing stuff like that. Now, those are just allies, but if you try to think about it within the subject matter directly. The Greeks built up entirely at their home area because they're still worried about this army. This is all happened before what I've been discussing. They've still got a big army here. The Seleucids built up an army here with the intention of walking over with their leader, but you can see their leader got schwacked by the Egyptians, who've now returned back to Egypt. This is kind of funny because other people can take Syria and Judea without the Ptolemaics being necessarily upset about them. In fact, the Ptolemaics won't go to war with anyone except the Seleucids, from the way the game is written, from the way the rules are written, I think. That's a little bothersome to me. I also notice, hey, freebie bonus area. I was noticing this when I wasn't really when I wasn't playing earlier today. This is not only a province, but it's also a territory all by itself. It's got no defenses, no barbarians or anything in it. That's pretty nice. Somebody can just ship a garrison up there, but nobody's moved on it yet. So far, this East Greek War could be seen as an excuse not to. A couple of people bought objectives. I can't remember what they are. A is Asia Minor, I believe. It's low point value for the Greeks, like 4 points. And over there, Carthage got one, which says they want to have they want to have a city in 5 different territories. Not provinces, 5 different territories, and they other than their home territory. So there's a reason for them to spread out. Right now they have one in the Sicilies, well, a town in the Sicilies, and a town here in Rome. I think it was actually cities, though, which gives them a good excuse to start building things up. Of course, if this comes down to a 2-player game, it may come down to you will own all of the Mediterranean, essentially, by the end of the game. It may not matter how many, whether or not these objectives are gained, whether or not you get bonuses on the civ points or whatever. What it comes down to then is, yeah, it's going to come down to a 2-player straight combat game over these little bubbles. As we start into the turn, Greece and Carthage have gone. Greece basically positioning here and setting up their navies to help blockade any kind of crossing, any kind of naval action there. I'm not quite sure how the straits work, but I wanted that guarded. I've got enough boats I can protect the main city and everything like that, because the east has nothing. That meant I left my main force here. I don't want to commit in, the wrong directions, as it were. With Carthage, they had to march up, grab some troops, and come back. They didn't have enough movement. They have kind of a crappy, in terms of activity, leader facing Rome right now. Their numbers aren't terribly strong. Trying to get an additional unit here is really tough, though. Like, there's no way through to Rome right now except along the land route, because Rome controls the one connection. There's no connection over here. It's kind of weird. And finishing out the remainder of the auto rounds, well, Rome didn't get an action. They're out of money. They're not going to get to do anything this game turn except sit there in Rome and hope that, well, that they don't lose it. For the Greeks, or for the Seleucids, they got something kind of lucky. They picked up a soldier of fortune, which they decided to activate, and they conquered back the territories from Ptolemy. That gets them the territory again. And now they can actually swing this around and maybe use it against the Greeks. It's better than what they have here. Well, it's not really bigger, but it's got the leadership advantage, and it's got cav and elephants and all kind of yummy good things. They can't combine them. That's not allowed. But they can use them to kind of maybe try to shake things up. This is only available for the rest of the turn. Strangely, the Soldier of Fortune rules, you don't pick a random Soldier of Fortune. Now, again, this is kind of weird. There's another Soldier of Fortune leader. Oh, he's the same value. Maybe there are 2 Soldier of Fortune cards. That seems unlikely. But, yeah. You get a fixed stuff, which is the same as what Pyrrhus provides. Now, Pyrrhus was a pretty impressive guy. So, whenever you get these Soldier of Fortunes, they must be someone who is on about par with Pyrrhus. I'm going to load this one up. The hell with it. I think I can skim a whole turn into one video pretty easily. Greeks try to launch an attack here because if they get this gateway, they can push through and take Antioch. Provides better defenses, provides a better block here. The East could, of course, withdraw from there, but then that opens things up and I can get Ionia back pretty easily. Pergamum is now pretty much destroyed. The only thing I have to do is be careful not to actually enter there, which is pretty easy, actually. That's about it. Well, Rome has fallen. Now there's still one town left. Basically it took 3 attacks, militia appearing, etc. You can see Rome's stability is a little lower, but not terribly badly hurt. But they're basically going to be knocked out of the game when that town falls. They'll have no source of income and not much to do. They'll still have the Pontus piece. And if somebody either empties Carthage out of Rome without being there, or gives them some cash, perhaps, there may be some way that Rome can come in that way. They're not completely out of the game is all that I'm kind of saying, I guess. Meanwhile, Carthage is going to continue moving south, try to take this, and they're almost out of money. They spent some money on a buck on siege just to make sure their first attack went well. They didn't lose much. They lost a step off of heavy infantry, but you know, once they take this, if they have more activations, they may move against the Greeks and try to take Bruttium and, you know, really kind of consolidate their hold. That'll give them a territory if they get all of that. That's more of a bonus. And then they're in a position, you know, where honestly things are not that one-sided over here. The Greeks look like they have this huge advantage and they're gathering the victory points as though they have the advantage. But the game has not devolved into that 2-player situation that I was afraid of. And if there's 3 players in the game, I think that there'll still be an interesting dynamic where victory points become the more important thing. You can't really count on just wiping the other players out necessarily. So the 2 of them may work together. They may finally decide that they can trust each other without speaking, essentially. We'll see. It's going to be tough. The East Soldier of Fortune pushes the Greeks back. They actually withdraw from here where they would have been under more danger, and they would have gotten attacked more times, into the town here. Now this is a damaged town, so they're actually able to be forced to be pushed back. I had an extra movement point there, so they're pushed back yet another hex or space, and that town's going to fall to the Soldier of Fortune. Carthage sweeps down, taking the last Roman city, or town, also taking the Greek city here. And there's just one more little piece, and that's all garrisons, preventing them from getting the entire boot, and thus the territory. Still got a couple minor actions left. I don't have a lot of money. One thing I want to point out, an annoyance in the game, some of these 1-pointers, most of them have a 2 on the back. That's great. 5-pointers have a 10 on the back, but some of these 1-pointers have a 10 on the back. And that means, well, I should have them sorted separately, or I should bag them and throw them somewhere else where they won't irritate me. Because I'm constantly pulling one out, and because it's been put in as a 1, and I end up with a 10 instead of a 2 when I expect it. And I usually catch it, I guess, but that could cause some problems. You know, I want to touch on what the Carthaginians picked up. They picked up an alliance card. They don't want to use it. They may use it shortly because they think that they can maybe come to a deal with either the Greeks or the East, but they want to kind of see how things fall out a little bit. I think they're going to play it to talk to the Greeks the next time they get an action. I didn't realize they had a card already in their hand. They would have done it before if they had. They want to hold a card for the mercenaries. Then the Greeks went and they got the Dies Irae, or Dies Irae, and they actually slipped away using naval movement, and they also started pulling some of these guys away to get their forces together. They're kind of trying to say to the Easterners, hey, you can have everything, it's okay, without speaking the words, because they can't. Then for the East, they drew a stability check. They had a choice between hitting themselves or Greece. Well, they could have hit Rome as well. But they decided to whack Greece a little further down rather than make the obvious make nice attribute of hitting the Romans, say. Which wouldn't really do anything to anybody. So I think they're kind of solidifying their position. They continued on with their Soldier of Fortune, capturing a couple of spaces here. They moved a heavy infantry out here into Asia Minor, grabbing Galatia. Of course, that forced a retreat, which took Ionia back from them. But it's beginning to look like the East is going to try to finish the Greeks off the way that the Carthaginians finished the Romans off. Question is what kind of alliance they might come to, or if they might or not, or whatever. We'll see. Hard to tell. But everybody else was out of money except Carthage. Carthage only had a couple bucks left. Still got a couple of actions in here, mainly just the Pontus one. Carthage was the only one therefore to get a draw. They got a bounteous harvest, which gave them another point of stability here. Now these are being marked with this, which is the amount of money they're going to lose because of stability increases that they've had over the turn. This is a special rule affecting Carthage in the advanced game. If they expand, they kind of have this disadvantage in that they lose some cash. Just one of those little special things. Then they played the alliance, and they managed to agree with Greece, or with the East, to cut a deal to split Greece in half, and the East actually asked them to intervene, so they pulled in here. Now, whether or not the East means this is a good question. This may be an attempt to try to get Carthage's army destroyed here by the Greeks. They may be able to make a deal with the Greeks. They're happy over in Asia Minor. This has pulled the Carthaginians into an area where they're heavily outnumbered if this force turns on them. What that means, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to fall out, but the Seleucids are kind of playing a double game here. They're not sure which way they want to go. They know this much. They don't want Carthage to capture a lot of Greece. Carthage's offer was kind of along the lines of, well, if you need help, I'll come in and help you, but if you don't, I understand that, I'll go do my own things. Well, the Seleucids' best option is destroy Greece and destroy the Carthaginian army at the same time and drain their treasury. I don't think they're going to get that kind of outcome. But what they might get is an agreement with Greece, destroy the Carthaginian army, turn themselves against Egypt, and then that'll give Greece enough of a respite to move against Italy. But it may also give Greece enough of a respite to stab the Seleucids. Who knows? And for the final action, the Romans, who are a little pissed at the Seleucids for allying with Carthage, as is obvious has happened, launched an attack with their Pontines into Galatia. The Seleucids withdrew, and attacking the town didn't seem worthwhile. But what that does do is it gives the Greeks Pontus and takes Galatia away from the Seleucids. So yeah, they're kind of playing a spoiler role here, but they are kind of pissed at anything to do with Carthage, and they can see very clearly the Greeks and Carthage are not allied and haven't been pulling any dicky stuff. Alright, well, I've taken the liberty of removing most of Rome's markers off the maps, but I am keeping them on the victory point because that's one of the points of question about the game. Hey, Rome's kind of out of the game. Should they really be pulling that -1 stability? Well, yeah, why not? They're over here, still on the chart. That'll keep the other players more in it, and they can possibly come back in, and it would only make sense if they did come in that they would be troubled, that their government would be kind of toppling at that point anyway, and easier to knock over. You could definitely look at it various different ways. Okay, but what do we got? When we looked at everything, Carthage way ahead, but you can see the East is kind of pulled ahead slightly of the Greeks. And when we go over to victory points, we see that the East is up to 15, the Greeks are at 23, and Carthage is up to 28, which does them well. That gives Carthage a point of stability, and we'll take one off the poor Romans here. That means Carthage is going to lose $4 total next turn, which is something of an equalizer because their income, as it stands, is up to 21, whereas everybody else is in the 11-12 range. So they actually have about as much income as the other two players combined. I guess we're about ready to put this one up. I got some cleanup to do that really kind of happens at the beginning of next turn. But for example, this elite guy, he goes back in my pile. And the leaders all get removed and all that kind of stuff. This guy's going to come off. All kind of stuff like that. I got to reshuffle decks. All that. Up it goes.